Imagine for a moment not a time machine, not tunnels of light, not spirals twisting through space, simply the absence of time. No before, no after, no memory, no waiting. If there were no time, would you still exist? Your memories, the faces, the seasons of rain, the sleepless nights, would they require time in order to be? And hope, what would hope mean without a tomorrow? We often imagine time travel as a science fiction dream, a machine, a leap, a chance to correct what once went wrong. But modern physics whispers something different. It suggests that perhaps time is not as simple as we assume. Perhaps past and future are not standing so far apart as they seem. Perhaps the structure of reality runs deeper than the current we drift along each day. Einstein once wrote that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion, an illusion remarkably convincing. And if that is true, if time is merely the way we perceive the world, then the question is no longer, can we return to the past, but rather, what is time? Truly, in this video, we will not build a machine. We will not fracture history. We will not attempt to alter a single event. Instead, we will step outside the flow of time, if only in imagination, and look back at it from beyond. We will pass through equations that allow the possibility of time travel, paradoxes capable of unraveling logic itself, hypotheses of the multiverse, entropy, causality, and a deeper question still, if the future already exists, are you truly free? But before we journey so far, let the mind slow. Feel your heartbeat, each pulse a quiet marker in time, each breath a gentle movement from present into future. You are traveling through time right now at the steady speed of 1 second per second. And the strange thing is, physics does not entirely forbid moving in another direction. The only question is, if it were possible, why are we still here, drifting forward like everyone else tonight? We will not search for quick answers. We will listen to what the universe permits, what it resists, and what it keeps as a secret not yet finished. Let your mind soften, for this journey is not meant to change the past. It is meant to understand more deeply the very moment you are living now. Imagine that you are lying beneath a sky without wind, not a single sound, not a single movement, only the stars and the vastness between them. We often think of time as a river. It flows. We are carried along. We cannot return. But in 1915, Albert Einstein proposed a radically different way of seeing the universe. In his theory of general relativity, he wrote that gravity is not a mysterious pulling force, but the curvature of space and time. Space and time, which we once believed were separate, are in truth woven together as one space-time. It sounds technical, but it carries a quiet and profound consequence. If space can bend, then time can bend as well. And when time bends, it is no longer a straight current. It may curve. It may loop back upon itself. In a letter to the family of a dear friend who had passed away, Einstein once wrote, "For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion, a stubborn illusion." Pause for a moment on the word illusion, not because the past does not exist, not because the future is unreal, but because the way we experience time may not be the way the universe structures it. Einstein's equations, cold neutral, indifferent, permit something known as closed time-like curves. If one were to move along such a curve, one could, mathematically speaking, return to one's own starting point in time. No one says it would be easy. No one claims it would be practical. But the equations do not forbid it. Then, in 1949, Kurt Gödel entered this story like a quiet sage. He discovered a solution to Einstein's equations describing a rotating universe. In such a universe, timelines could close upon themselves. No machine required, no advanced technology. The very structure of the cosmos would allow it. When Gödel presented this solution to Einstein as a birthday gift, Einstein found no mathematical flaw. But he was uneasy. Perhaps because if time can loop, then causality, the principle upon which we build our understanding of everything, becomes fragile. We grow up with a clear order: cause first, effect after. You drop a glass, it falls, it shatters. But if the deeper structure of the universe allows time to turn back upon itself, that order is no longer absolute, and that unsettles us, not because we desperately wish to return to the past, but because we want the world to be logical. Yet physics, in its silence, makes no such promise. It offers only structure. We are the ones who interpret. There is a gentle beauty here. The universe is not an authoritarian ruler. It does not declare no time travel is absolutely forbidden. It merely sets severe condition, extreme geometries, energies nearly impossible to attain, like a door that is not locked, but rests at the summit of a mountain no one can climb. And in this moment, as you listen to these words, perhaps what matters is not whether we will ever build a time machine. Perhaps what matters is the soft truth that reality is deeper than we imagine. We often feel imprisoned within the flow of time, regretting what has passed, anxious about what has not yet come. But if past, present, and future are simply coordinates within a greater structure, then perhaps you have not truly lost what has happened. It still exists somewhere within the geometry of space-time. This does not mean you can return. It only means this moment is not alone. It is part of a vast design. And when we understand that physics does not entirely forbid the bending of time, we begin to understand something else as well. The world is not as simple as our feeling of it. Our worry about tomorrow, our longing for yesterday, perhaps both belong to a network far larger than we see. And as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, in meditations, time is a sort of river of passing events, and strong is its current. We feel that current intensely, but perhaps at a deeper level, that river does not merely flow. It bends, it spirals, it connects shores we cannot perceive. As you lie down tonight and your heartbeat begins to slow, try to think of time not as an enemy dragging you forward, but as a vast geometry within which you already rest. You do not need to return to the past. You do not need to see the future. It is enough to know that the universe, in all its strangeness and quiet, has not entirely sealed that door. And perhaps that is enough to soften your mind. Not because we will travel through time, but because we are living within a reality deeper than the current we feel. And within that depth, there is a stillness, not a gun, not an act of violence, only a door. You step through that door and return to a time before you were born. You see your grandfather still young, not yet having met your grandmother. A single small change, a slight delay, a meeting that never happens. And then you stand there in silence and realize what must follow. If they never meet, you will not exist. If you do not exist, you cannot be standing there. A closed circle, a question that erases itself. The grandfather paradox is not frightening because it speaks of death. It is frightening because it speaks of contradiction. We live upon a very basic trust that every event has a cause, and that cause must come before its effect. This order is not merely a habit of thought. It is the foundation of science, of morality, of memory itself. You remember yesterday because it happened before today. You worry about tomorrow because it has not yet occurred. If that order dissolves, time is no longer a current. It becomes a labyrinth without exit. The Scottish philosopher David Hume once wrote in an inquiry concerning human understanding, all reasonings concerning matter of fact seem to be founded on the relation of cause and effect. All our reasoning about the world rests upon that relation. Now, imagine a universe in which you can change the past. If you alter a single detail, the entire chain of events that follows begins to warp. But if you alter the very cause of your own existence, you create a contradiction that cannot be resolved. And here we begin to see something essential. The problem is not whether we possess the technology. The problem is whether reality itself permits contradiction. A universe that allows you both to exist and not exist within the same timeline would no longer be a universe comprehensible through logic. This paradox is like a mirror. It reflects the way we understand ourselves. We believe we are a continuous sequence, a straight line from past to future. But if that line can fold back upon itself, if the end can touch the beginning, then our identity becomes fragile. In Confessions, Augustine of Hippo wrote, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know." Time is the thing we feel most clearly and understand the least. The grandfather paradox does not merely challenge physics. It challenges the very idea of I. If you return and alter the past, are you still yourself? If your memories contradict the new reality, which one is true? Perhaps what unsettles us is not the possibility of changing history, but the possibility of losing the stability of the self. Causality gives us safety. It tells us the world has order, that what has happened, that we cannot accidentally erase ourselves. If that order collapses, we do not merely lose the past, we lose the ground on which we think. And perhaps that is why many physicists believe that even if equations permit strange structures, the universe will not permit contradiction, not because it is moral, not because it protects humanity, but because a reality containing contradiction cannot sustain itself. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant once wrote, in Critique of Pure Reason, "The understanding cannot intuit, and the senses cannot think." We require structure in order to understand. We require order in order to think. Causality is that structure. The grandfather paradox, then, is not truly a tale of violence or historical revision. It is a reminder that logic is not optional. It is the condition that makes experience possible at all. And when we lie down at night thinking of what has passed, we often wish we could repair a single moment. A word is spoken, a decision made, but perhaps the impossibility of return is what keeps this world steady. If the past could be erased easily, the present would lose its weight. If every choice could be undone, choice would lose its meaning. Perhaps the finitude of time is not a limitation, but the foundation, value. The grandfather paradox does not end with an answer. It ends with a realization. Time travel is not blocked by a lack of technology. It is blocked by the structure of reality itself. And that structure of causality is also what grants your life order, memory, and hope. When you close your eyes tonight, notice that you cannot return to 5 minutes ago, but you can feel it. You can hold it in memory. Time passes and you cannot revise it. But that is precisely what makes each moment precious. Not because we can go back, but because we cannot. And within that impossibility, there is a strange peace, a universe that does not permit contradiction, a reality that does not negate itself, a current that does not reverse. You do not need to return to the past to understand this. Simply listen to your heartbeat and allow it to continue forward. Not a person, not an action, only a book. You are sitting in a quiet room. The light is soft. Night rests beyond the window. A stranger approaches and places a manuscript in your hands. He tells you it is the greatest work ever written and that you are its author. Years later, you publish that book. It becomes a classic. Time passes, and then, at some moment in the future, you return to the past to place that very book back into your own hands. The loop closes. No beginning, no moment of creation. The book exists because it has always existed. This is the bootstrap paradox, a paradox that does not destroy life, but unsettles our intuition about origin. We are accustomed to believing that everything must have a starting point. An idea must be conceived. A melody must be composed. A story must be written. The philosopher Aristotle once wrote in Metaphysics, all men by nature desire to know, and in order to know, we seek causes. We ask who wrote the book, who invented the idea, who was first. The bootstrap paradox whispers another possibility. Perhaps there is no first. Information may simply be a structure within space-time. If time can bend, then that structure may sustain itself like a bridge spanning two shores without needing a pillar in the middle. This is not merely a mathematical puzzle. It touches something deeply human. Who are you? You believe you have a story that begins in childhood, yet your memories are shaped by your present self. You recall the past according to how you live today, and those memories influence how you will act tomorrow. A subtle loop, not entirely infinite, but not entirely linear. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, 'This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more, and innumerable times more.'" The idea of eternal recurrence was not meant to terrify, but to invite reflection on the value of each moment. The bootstrap paradox does not claim that we will relive everything. It suggests that at the deepest level of reality, some structures may not require an origin. But what would that mean? In physics, information is tied to entropy. Every bit of information carries an energetic cost. In our world, nothing appears from nothing without leaving a trace. So does the universe allow information to generate itself? If the book exists within a loop, where does the energy to print it come from? Where does its meaning arise? Perhaps the answer lies elsewhere. The loop does not create new information. It merely distributes it within the structure of time. Information is not born, it is conserved, like a melody echoing in a room. The sound does not emerge from nothing. It is simply air vibrating in a particular order. And perhaps at a deeper level, that book is also just a vibration within the structure of space-time. The philosopher Martin Heidegger wrote, "In being and time is not a thing, thus nothing which is, and yet it remains constant in its passing away, without being something temporal like the beings in time. Time is not an object, and yet it is the ground of all objects. If time can form loops, then information may exist within that structure, without requiring a beginning in the ordinary sense. And as you reflect on this in the quiet of night, you may begin to see that you yourself are a gentle loop of memory and expectation. You remember the past in order to define the present. You imagine the future in order to shape today's choices. The information that is you does not reside in a single instant. It is a network. The bootstrap paradox, then, is not merely about a book. It is about whether everything must have a beginning in the way we assume. Perhaps reality is not a chain of dominoes that starts with a first piece. Perhaps it is a complete structure in which each part supports the others, like a piece of music in which the first note is no more important than the last. Only the wholeness of the melody matters. When you lie down and close your eyes, notice that your consciousness itself contains a small loop. You remember what happened a few seconds ago. You anticipate what will happen a few seconds from now. And between those 2 points, you experience a present. That present has no fixed origin. It is the intersection of memory and expectation. Perhaps that is the most subtle bootstrap paradox of all. Consciousness exists through its own looping. Does the universe permit information to generate itself? Perhaps not. Perhaps it only permits information to exist within closed structures that do not require a linear beginning. And if so, that is not frightening. It simply means that reality is deeper than our intuition. Not everything requires a first time. Some structures simply are. In this still night, you do not need to resolve the paradox. You do not need to discover who wrote the book. Simply feel that the universe may be more intricate than the straight lines we draw in our minds. And within that intricacy there is a quiet beauty, a loop without a beginning, but also without contradiction. Only structure, only being. And you right now are part of that structure, drifting gently through time, whether it is straight or curved, linear or closed. Let that thought soften in your mind, not as a question demanding an answer, but as a slow melody repeating until you fall asleep. You return to the past, not to change it, only to witness. You stand in a familiar room. An event is about to unfold, an event you remember clearly from your own memory. And in that moment, you realize something strange. You have always been there, not as an intruder, but as part of the story. This is the spirit of the self-consistence principle. According to Igor Novikov, if space-time allows closed time-like loops, then any event that occurs within such a loop must be self-consistent. No paradox, no contradiction, no possibility of killing your grandfather or erasing yourself from existence. If you were to return and attempt such a thing, something would prevent it. Not because the universe possesses a will, not because it dislikes paradox, but because configurations that lead to contradiction simply do not occur. Their probability is zero. In this sense, the universe resembles a piece of music already written in full. You may replay a passage. You may hear it from a different angle, but you cannot force it into a melody that denies itself. This idea feels different from the bootstrap paradox. There we worry about information without origin. Here we encounter a reality in which everything has always fit together. There is no changing the past, only completing the structure. Think about that slowly. Perhaps in your memory of some distant event, there was a shadowy figure you never clearly recognized. And if you return, you discover that the figure was you. That does not alter the past. It clarifies it. There is comfort in this picture. The universe is not so fragile that one mistaken action can tear it apart. It is not a pane of glass ready to shatter. It is a resilient structure. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Everything is woven together, and the web is holy." The image is fitting. Reality is like a woven tapestry. Each thread has its place. Up close you see crossing lines and tangled patterns. Step back and a harmony emerges in this vision. Time travel is not an act of rebellion against the structure. It is simply another path across the same woven fabric. And this leads to a deeper question. If everything has always been this way, are we still free? That question can wait for another chapter. For now, we only breathe in the atmosphere of self-consistency. It does not say you are forced. It does not say you lack choice. It says only that whatever choice you truly make has always been part of the whole. Perhaps what unsettles us about destiny is the fear of losing control. But this principle does not strip away your action. It only says that your action does not fracture the order of things. Like a river, you may swim, you may shift your direction within the current, but you cannot make the water flow back to its source. And perhaps that is not a limitation. Perhaps it is the foundation of stability. If the universe did not lock out paradox, if every contradiction were allowed to occur, reality would dissolve into countless self-negating possibilities. No reliable memory, no fixed history, no ground upon which to think. The self-consistency principle then whispers, reassurance the world is not so easily broken. You cannot accidentally destroy your own existence. And in ordinary life, that idea carries a gentle echo. You cannot go back to correct a mistake, but perhaps that mistake has always been part of the path that led you here. Perhaps the moments you wish you could undo were always necessary threads in the tapestry of your life. In this quiet night, as you listen and your breathing begins to low, allow yourself to feel that, not as surrender, but as understanding. Perhaps the universe does not permit paradox because it is woven from consistency. And you, with every memory, every choice, every turning, are part of that structure. Everything has always been this way. Not in the sense that you are trapped, but in the sense that you belong. Let that thought settle in your mind like a still lake without ripples. A self-consistent universe, a structure without contradiction, a gentle destiny not to imprison you, but to keep the world steady. And within that steadiness, you may relax. No need to repair the past. No need to fear that a small action will shatter all of reality. For if time travel is possible at all, perhaps it only leads you to what has always been there. And perhaps, in a very deep sense, you have always been exactly where you needed to be. Let that reflection pass through you like a current that causes no disturbance, and rest within the durable structure of time. You stand before a fork in the road, a small choice: turn left or turn right, speak or remain silent, stay or leave. According to ordinary intuition, you choose one path and the other disappears. It lingers only in imagination. But according to Hugh Everett the third, perhaps no path truly vanishes. In the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, each possibility is not discarded. It is simply realized in another branch of reality. The universe does not choose, it branches. In one universe you turn left, in another you turn right. Both are real. No paradox, no contradiction, no collapse of causality. If you return to the past and alter an event, you do not shatter your original timeline. You merely step into a new branch. Your past remains intact, but you are no longer within it. There is a strange beauty in this idea. It frees the universe from the need to choose correctly in order to avoid paradox. Every possibility has its place. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote, in either/or life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. In ordinary life, we understand the past only in retrospect, yet we must move forward without knowing the outcome. In many worlds, both truths coexist. We live forward, while all our possibilities unfold elsewhere in branching realities. There is something both comforting and sorrowful in this vision. Comforting because no choice is truly lost. Sorrowful because we will never meet the version of ourselves who chose differently. Think of a major decision in your life, an opportunity you missed, words of love you never spoke, a city you never moved to. By intuition, those paths have closed. But if many worlds is true, somewhere you spoke those words. Somewhere you moved to that city. Somewhere you became another person. And that version knows nothing of you here. The branching creates a kind of cosmic solitude. Each branch separates and continues without ever converging again. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in The Gay Science, "We are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge, and with good reason." Perhaps we do not fully know ourselves, not only because our psychology is complex, but because we are merely one among countless possible versions. Many worlds is not only a solution to time travel paradoxes. It is a portrait of reality in which every possibility is honored. In this portrait, there is no grandfather paradox. You may return and change an event, but you are only creating a new reality. The old one remains unharmed. Causality holds within each branch. Logic does not collapse. Only reality multiplies. Yet, this raises a subtle question. If all possibilities exist, does your choice still matter? If somewhere you have already done everything you could possibly do, is your action here still meaningful? Perhaps the answer lies in experience. No matter how many branches exist, you live only in one. You feel only one chain of memories. You carry only one story. Meaning does not arise from eliminating other possibilities. It arises because you experience this branch as real. The philosopher William James wrote in The Will to Believe, "My first act of free will shall be to believe in free will." Even in a branching universe, you must act as though your choices matter, because that is how you live. And perhaps that is the healing point of many worlds. You need not fear that one wrong decision will ruin all of reality. The universe is vast enough to contain every possibility, but you also do not need to live in all of them. You only need to live here. In this quiet night, as you think of the crossroads behind you, try to see them differently, not as doors slammed shut, but as branches that separated. You did not lose them. You simply did not walk them. And that does not make your present path any less meaningful. It makes it concrete. Among countless possibilities, you are here, breathing, listening, thinking. The universe may be branching at the quantum level each instant, But your consciousness, your story feels like a continuous flow, both liberating and lonely, vast and intimately your own. Let that thought settle like distant starlight. Somewhere, perhaps there are innumerable versions of you, but this version lying in the gentle darkness of night is unique to itself. You do not need to meet the other branches. You do not need to repair anything. Simply remain here, in this branch, in this moment, and allow reality, whether branching or not, to hold you in its vastness. Breathe in slowly, exhale softly. The universe may divide into countless possibilities, but your sleep tonight requires only one. Not a clock spinning backward, not a glowing control panel, only a tunnel, a short passage through the fabric of space and time. In physics, it is called a wormhole, a bridge between two distant points in space-time. The idea arises from solutions to Einstein's equations and is known as the Einstein-Rosen bridge. Mathematically, it is not forbidden. If you could keep a wormhole open, and if you could cause its two mouths to experience a difference in time by accelerating one end or placing it near a strong gravitational field, you could create a passage between two different moments. It sounds almost achievable, but there is a condition. To prevent a wormhole from collapsing, you would need something called negative energy exotic matter. This substance is not merely rare. It has never been observed at the scale required. It violates the energy conditions that most familiar forms of matter obey. The universe does not say no. It simply says, bring me something nearly impossible. Then there are Kerr black holes rotating black holes. According to the solution found by Roy Kerr, if a black hole spins fast enough, its internal structure may contain closed timelike curves. But to reach that region, you must pass the event horizon. And what happens beyond it, no one can say with certainty. In this case, the time machine lies buried within one of the harshest environments the cosmos can offer. There is also the Tipler cylinder, a massive cylinder spinning near the speed of light. If long enough and fast enough, it could twist space-time around it, forming temporal loops. But long enough here means infinite. The Alcubierre drive a warp bubble, compressing space in front and expanding it behind, allowing faster than light travel without violating local relativity. Yet it too requires negative energy on a scale bordering on the unreal. Cosmic strings, hypothetical remnants from the early universe, possessing immense density and the ability to warp space. Again, not forbidden, simply never observed. What is astonishing is that none of these ideas are myths. They are legitimate consequences of mathematics. The philosopher Immanuel Kant once wrote in Critique of Pure Reason, "Reason must approach nature with the view of receiving information from it. We pose our questions and nature answers with equations, but nature does not promise that its answers will be easy for us to realize." Here, there is a beautiful tension. Physics permits the possibility, yet it sets conditions so severe they lie almost beyond human reach, like a door left unlocked, but perched atop a mountain where there is no air to breathe. And this invites another question. Why does the universe allow such structures within mathematics, yet make them nearly untouchable? Perhaps because possibility is not the same as realization. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote in The Sickness Unto Death, "The self is a relation which relates itself to its own self. Human beings are creatures aware of their finitude, yet dreaming of the infinite." The time machine is a symbol of that longing. We do not merely wish to understand the universe. We wish to transcend its limits, to repair the past, to glimpse the future, to bend the structure within which we live. But perhaps the severity of physical conditions is a gentle reminder not every possibility is meant for us. Stephen Hawking once joked that if time travel were possible, we would already have seen tourists from the future. Behind that humor lies a deeper thought. Perhaps nature protects causality, not because it fears us, but because its structure is delicate and balanced. If negative energy existed in abundance, if wormholes could be stabilized, if warp drives could be activated, our reality would look very different. Perhaps their near impossibility is precisely what keeps this world steady. In this quiet night, when you think of a time machine, try to see it not merely as technology. See it as metaphor. We always wish to go back and repair a mistake. We wish to look ahead and avoid a pain, but perhaps that very impossibility is what gives life its weight. If you could easily return and change everything, would you still cherish your choices? If the future could be seen in advance, would tomorrow still carry wonder? Science does not forbid time travel, but it demands conditions almost divine. And perhaps within that demand lies a gentle lesson. We are not gods. We are finite beings within an immense universe. We may understand the equations. We may dream of wormholes. We may calculate the necessary energy. Yet in the end, we still live second by second, moment by moment, unable to leap beyond ourselves. Let that not disappoint you. Let it relieve you. You do not need to build a time machine to live fully. You do not need to bend space to find meaning. The universe may contain extraordinary structures, spinning black holes, cosmic strings, bridges hidden in mathematics. But you right now require only something simple. Breathe in, breathe out, be here. in this branch, in this moment, and let the time machines, however possible in equations, dissolve like distant dreams beneath the night sky. You have done the unthinkable. A wormhole opens before you. Its two mouths have been placed in different moments. Just one more step and you could cross the boundary of history. But just as the structure nears completion, something happens. Quantum fluctuations begin to intensify. Energy accumulates. Space trembles. And before you can step through, the wormhole collapses. Not because you miscalculated, not because the technology failed, but because nature itself does not allow it to endure. This is the spirit of the chronology protection conjecture proposed by Stephen Hawking. He once half-joked that perhaps there exists a kind of time protection agency, a physical principle that prevents backward time travel in order to avoid paradox. In his calculations, and in those of others, when a closed timelike curve is about to form quantum effects, particularly the divergence of vacuum energy may grow without bound. And when energy rises toward infinity, spacetime can no longer remain stable. The wormhole collapses. The loop dissolves. Causality is preserved. There is something deeply thought-provoking here. It is not that the universe crudely forbids time travel. It may be that its deeper laws render paradoxical structures inherently unstable. Like a building constructed with a flawed center of gravity, it collapses under its own imbalance. The philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz once wrote, "Nothing happens without a reason. If paradox were allowed, it would shake the very structure of reason. And if reason underlies all events, then a reality permitting contradiction might cease to be coherent reality at all." Does nature hate paradox? Perhaps that question should not be understood emotionally. Nature has no feelings, but it has structure, and that structure may not tolerate contradiction. Think of mathematics. A system of axioms containing contradiction collapses. Within it, you could prove anything and disprove anything. It loses meaning. The universe may resemble a physical axiom system. If paradox were permitted, every event would become unreliable. And this is not only a matter for physics, it touches the way we live. You rely on memory because you trust the past is fixed. You rely on prediction because you trust causality is stable. If nature did not protect causality, the world would descend into a deeper chaos than mere physical disorder, a cognitive chaos. The philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote in Critique of Pure Reason, thoughts without content are empty intuitions, without concepts are blind. We require structure in order to think. If time lacked consistent structure, consciousness itself would have no foundation. The chronology protection conjecture, then, is not merely a technical hypothesis. It is a reminder that reality may be maintaining its own stability at depths we do not yet fully comprehend. Perhaps quantum effects, strange and elusive as they are, serve as invisible gatekeepers, not because they intend to, but because their nature prevents paradoxical configurations from persisting. There is gentle comfort in this thought. You cannot accidentally shatter history. You cannot create a contradiction that tears apart the world simply through one mistaken act. Reality may be stronger than our fears. In ordinary life, too, we experience moments that feel as though they might break everything. Choices that seem capable of destroying the entire structure of our lives. Yet somehow, the world continues. Consequences unfold, but the fabric does not dissolve. Perhaps that reflects a deeper principle. The world is woven from consistency. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "All that happens is as familiar and well known as the rose in spring and the fruit in summer." There is a natural order in every event, not because it is always pleasant, but because it belongs to the structure of the whole. Chronology protection is not a wall. It is a balancing mechanism. If you attempt to bend time far enough to create paradox, quantum fluctuations may rise until the structure destroys itself, as though the universe gently says, "This far and no further," not in anger, but in preservation. And as you lie down in this quiet night, perhaps that thought can soften you. Reality is not so fragile. You do not inhabit a world where a single small act can tear apart the fabric of everything. Causality may be guarded by deeper layers of nature. Perhaps you will never build a time machine. Perhaps wormholes will always collapse before you cross them. But that is not failure. It may be an expression of stability, a universe that protects its own coherence, a structure that does not allow contradiction to multiply. Does nature hate paradox? Perhaps not. Perhaps it simply cannot contain it. And within that impossibility, there is a certain peace. Let that thought move through you, not as a problem to solve, but as a soft ripple upon still water. Causality remains. Time continues in one direction, and you in this moment are held safely within that structure. Breathe in slowly, exhale gently. The universe may be vast and strange, but it may also be quietly protecting itself and you from the unraveling of paradox. And within that invisible protection, you may rest. Imagine a glass falls from a table. It strikes the floor. It shatters into dozens of small fragments. The sound rings out and dissolves into the air. You have seen this before, but you have never seen the fragments tremble, lift themselves, reassemble into an unbroken glass, and leap back onto the table. At the level of the fundamental equations of mechanics, such a motion is not entirely forbidden. If every particle were to move precisely along its reverse trajectory, the glass could in principle reassemble. Yet, in reality, it does not happen. Why? The answer lies in a single word: entropy. Entropy measures the dispersion of energy, the degree of disorder within a system. The second law of thermodynamics states that in a closed system, entropy tends to increase. Order dissolves into dispersion. Structure yields to probability. The physicist Ludwig Boltzmann connected entropy to the microscopic probabilities of particle configurations. An intact glass corresponds to a very small number of microstates. A pile of shattered fragments corresponds to an enormous number. Nature does not choose chaos. It simply moves toward what is more probable. And from that movement, the arrow of time emerges. We remember the past because entropy was lower there. We do not remember the future because entropy has not yet increased in that direction. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer wrote in The World as Will and Representation Time is that by virtue of which everything becomes nothing in our hands. Time is not an enemy, but it is the irreversible flow of change. What deepens the arrow of time further is the question of the beginning. Our universe, according to modern observation, appears to have begun in a state of extraordinarily low entropy. This is the mystery. If nature tends to move from order to disorder, why did it begin from such remarkable order? Why was the Big Bang not a state of maximum chaos? That question remains open. Yet, from that special beginning, every structure, stars, planets, life, has emerged. While the total entropy of the universe continues to rise. Life, in a sense, consists of small islands of order within an expanding ocean of disorder. And you, with your memories, your thoughts, your personal story, are also a temporary structure within that current. The arrow of time is not only about a broken glass. It is about childhood that does not return, about conversations that have ended, about opportunities that have passed. The philosopher Augustine of Hippo wrote in Confessions, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know." But we feel time more clearly than almost any other concept. Yet when we attempt to grasp it, it slips from our hands. Irreversibility can sadden us. We wish we could reassemble the glass. We wish we could return to a moment now gone, but perhaps that impossibility is precisely what gives things their weight. If the glass could easily restore itself, its breaking would carry no meaning. If every mistake could be undone, choice would lose its value. The arrow of time is not merely a consequence of entropy. It is the foundation of memory, of responsibility, of hope. Hope has meaning only if the future has not yet occurred. Memory has meaning only if the past cannot be changed. In this quiet night, when you think of a moment that has passed, try to see it not as something lost, but as a point within the entropy structure of the universe. It cannot be reassembled, but it has happened. And the fact that it has happened is part of what makes you who you are now. The philosopher Martin Heidegger wrote, "In being and time being toward death is essentially being ahead of itself." We live oriented toward the future, knowing that each moment will pass. The arrow of time is not ascent, it is movement. The shattered glass does not reassemble, but from its fragments we learn to be more careful. We learn acceptance. The universe began in low entropy, a special beginning, and from there unfolded a story that cannot be reversed. That story includes you. You cannot return to 5 minutes ago, but you can feel your continuity through each heartbeat. The arrow of time does not merely push you forward, it weaves meaning. In a world where everything could be reversed, nothing would truly matter. In a world where entropy increases, where broken glasses do not mend themselves, where moments do not return, everything carries a fragile preciousness. Let that thought settle like your breath, not as a reminder of loss, but as a reminder of value. Time does not run backward. And precisely because of that, each moment you are living is unique. Breathe in, breathe out. The arrow of time continues forward, and you within its current need not resist. Simply drift gently. Imagine not the glass reassembling, but every particle in the universe, every electron, every photon, simultaneously reversing its momentum. If that were to occur perfectly, the entire motion of the cosmos would run backward. Smoke would return to the cigarette. Words would gather themselves back into the mouth. Footsteps would retreat across the sand. It sounds like a miracle, yet in the language of many fundamental physical equations, it is not forbidden. Classical mechanics is almost time-symmetric. Replace t with minus t, and the equations still hold. The Schrödinger equation in quantum mechanics shares this symmetry with the proper adjustments. At the microscopic level, nature appears to favor no direction. The astrophysicist Arthur Eddington introduced the phrase arrow of time. He recognized that this arrow does not arise from the fundamental laws, but from the increase of entropy. The arrow is not in the microscopic equations. It is in probability. The shattered glass does not reassemble, not because doing so violates a basic law, but because the number of microstates corresponding to the intact glass is incomparably smaller than those corresponding to the fragments. If you could reverse every particle with absolute precision, the glass could indeed come back together. But achieving such precision within a universe of almost infinite degrees of freedom is nearly inconceivable. Here, we touch something profound. Perhaps the direction of time is not an absolute law, but a statistical consequence. The philosopher David Hume wrote in an enquiry concerning human understanding custom is the great guide of human life. We believe in causality and in the forward flow of time because it is what we always observe. Yet, at a deeper level, the microscopic structure may carry no such inherent orientation. If the arrow of time is a consequence of probability, then traveling backward in time may not be forbidden in principle, only extraordinarily improbable. This shifts the question. Instead of asking, can time run backward? We might ask, can a low entropy state arise spontaneously? Statistically, the answer is yes. But with a probability so vanishingly small that in our present cosmic epoch, it is effectively zero. The physicist Ludwig Boltzmann once suggested that rare fluctuations might produce pockets of low entropy within a chaotic universe. From this speculation later emerged the idea of the Boltzmann brain, a conscious configuration appearing at random in a sea of disorder. These reflections reveal something subtle. Time may not be an absolute current, but a consequence of the universe's special initial condition. Our cosmos appears to have begun in an extraordinarily low entropy state. From there, it drips toward greater dispersion. Had the initial conditions been different, the arrow might have pointed differently. The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that time is a form of intuition, a structure imposed by the mind upon experience. If the direction of time does not reside in the fundamental equations, but in probability and initial conditions, perhaps our experience of flow is the way consciousness interacts with entropy. Here we sense a quiet shift. If the arrow of time is statistical, then running time backward is not supernatural. It is merely unimaginably unlikely. Like the air molecules in a room suddenly gathering into one corner, no law forbids it. Yet it almost never occurs. There is a strange peace in this. Time is not an absolute tyrant. It is the consequence of probability within an immense universe. The philosopher Heraclitus once said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." We understand this as irreversibility. Yet if the microscopic river has no fixed direction, perhaps the impossibility lies at the level of experience, not at the level of equations. In this quiet night when you imagine time running backward, see it as a question of probability, not absolutely forbidden, simply almost never occurring. And perhaps it is precisely this almost never that gives the world its stability. You need not fear that tomorrow will suddenly become yesterday. You need not fear that memory will dissolve into chaos. Entropy continues to increase. Probability continues to guide the configurations of the universe. Yet at a deeper level, nature does not prefer before or after. It simply unfolds. And you, within this unfolding, experience a direction. Not because the universe commands it, but because probability has placed you in a branch where entropy increases. Let that thought soften. Time may not be an arrow carved into the eternal structure of reality. It may be the consequence of a rare initial arrangement. And if so, time travel may not be forbidden by divinity, only rendered nearly impossible by statistics. Within that near impossibility, there is beauty. You need not bend the equations. You need not reverse every particle. Simply recognize that reality is deeper than intuition. The arrow of time may be a statistical illusion, but your experience of it, each heartbeat, each breath, is real. Breathe in, breathe out. Even if Tim could run backward in equations for you, it still flows gently forward. And perhaps that is enough. There are nights that are very still. You lie there, eyes closed, and feel time passing. But if you truly pause and listen, do you hear time, or do you only hear your own heartbeat? Philosophy has long divided into two great currents concerning the nature of time. One is called presentism. Only the present is real. The past has vanished. The future does not yet exist. The other is eternalism. Past, present, and future all exist equally within a four-dimensional structure, often described as the block universe. In that block model, every event, from the death of a star billions of years ago to your tomorrow, already lies there as points within space-time. You do not create the future. You move through it. The physicist Albert Einstein once wrote in a letter to the family of his friend Michel Besso, after his passing, for us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Persistent illusion, not because he wished to deny human feeling, but because within relativity there is no universal now shared by all observers. Each person, depending on motion and gravitational field, possesses their own slice of time. If there is no absolute present, then the idea that only the present is real becomes fragile. The block universe begins to sound plausible. And yet another voice emerges, softer, more radical. Julian Barber proposed a bold idea in the end of time. Time does not exist. Not that it flows slowly, not that it bends, but that it does not exist at all. He described reality as Platonia, a realm of all possible configurations of the universe. Each configuration is a separate timeless now. There is no flow connecting them, only structure, like the frames of a film. Each frame exists independently. The sensation of motion arises only when the mind links them together. Barber wrote, "Time is nothing but a measure of change." And if change is merely how we compare different configurations, then time may be a cognitive tool rather than a fundamental entity. Here the tone becomes almost meditative. If there is no time, no flowing river, then there is no absolute loss. Every moment you have ever lived still exists as a configuration. It has not vanished. It has simply moved beyond the spotlight of your awareness. Then another physicist, Carlo Rovelli, offers a gentler view. He does not entirely deny time. He suggests that time is emergent. In The Order of Time, Rovelli writes, "Time is ignorance, not in a negative sense, but in the sense that time appears when we do not track the full microscopic state of the universe. Temperature does not exist at the level of a single molecule, yet it emerges when we observe billions of molecules together. Time may be similar a statistical property. When we zoom out, we see. When we zoom in, we see only correlations between states." This idea carries a gentle atmosphere. Time is not a harsh ruler. It is a phenomenon arising from how we interact with the cosmos. The philosopher Martin Heidegger wrote in Being and Time, "Temporality is the meaning of being." For Heidegger, time is not merely a physical dimension. It is the way human existence unfolds. We do not merely exist in time. We are temporal beings. So when physics asks, "Is time even real?" the question is not only physical, it touches identity. If presentism is true, each moment is fragile. It appears, then vanishes forever. If the block universe is real, nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment exists eternally at its own coordinate. A comforting vision. If Barber is right, if only configurations exist, then passing is simply the story consciousness tells itself. And if Rovelli is right, if time emerges from microscopic ignorance, then your experience of now is a product of interaction, not an absolute feature of reality. As you lie still in the darkness, try to sense this gently. Is time truly flowing, or are only the states of your body and mind changing? Has the past truly disappeared, or does it persist as a configuration no longer illuminated by awareness? Does the future not yet exist, or does it already lie there awaiting your encounter? Do not try to answer, simply feel. There is quiet healing in the idea that time may not be an enemy. If the block universe is correct, every beautiful moment you have lived still exists eternally. If time is emergent, the pressure to use every second may soften. You are not chased by a relentless river. You are simply experiencing one slice. If Barber is right, if there is no time, then anxiety about past and future may be only the mind weaving its narrative. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "In meditations, confine yourself to the present, whether time is real or not." That counsel remains true at the level of experience. For the only thing you can touch right now is this sensation, this breath, this heartbeat. Perhaps the question, "Is time even real?" does not require a final answer. Perhaps it is a doorway to humility before reality, a doorway to the possibility that what seems obvious, flow before and after past and future, may be structures emerging from something far deeper. And as you drift towards sleep, as consciousness loosens, its narrative time seems to dissolve. In dreams, past and future intermingle. There is no clock, no arrow, only experience. Perhaps that is the gentlest hint. Time, whether real, emergent, or merely configuration, is still the frame within which you live. And within that frame, each moment is complete. You need not know whether it is real in an absolute sense. You only need to know that right now you are here, and that in the stillness of night is already a miracle. Imagine two particles of light, two photons born at the same instant from a single source. They travel apart, very far apart. One photon here, the other at the edge of a galaxy. And then you measure the state of one photon. Instantly the state of the other is determined. No signal crossing space, no delay, no mediator. Only a synchronization that transcends distance. This phenomenon is called quantum entanglement. Albert Einstein once referred to it as spooky action at a distance in a 1947 letter to Max Born. Spooky, because it seems to violate our most basic intuition that causes must propagate through space at a finite speed. Yet, experiment after experiment across decades has confirmed that entanglement is real. At the deepest level, the universe is not as separate as we imagine. And if space does not truly divide events, does time truly divide them either? Take one more step into the realm of delayed choice experiments. In these experiments, the decision about how to measure a photon is made after the photon has already passed through the apparatus, and the results suggest that the photon's earlier behavior appears to depend on a choice made in the future. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed such experiments. He once said, "No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon." In delayed choice experiments, that statement acquires an almost unsettling depth. The future seems to participate in defining the past, not in a way that allows us to send messages backward in time, but in a microscopic, subtle, almost whispered manner. This leads to another idea causality. The suggestion that cause and effect may not be entirely linear. That influence may flow backward as well as forward. In everyday life, this sounds absurd. But at the quantum level, the Schrödinger equation does not privilege a direction of time. The fundamental equations of microphysics are time symmetric. They do not know past or future. They know only states and correlations. John Kramer proposed the transactional interpretation, a bold way of understanding quantum mechanics. In his model, each quantum event results from a handshake between a wave traveling forward from the past and a wave traveling backward from the future. A transaction across time, a dialogue. Not that the future controls the past in a way that breaks logic, but that both participate in forming the present. The idea does not violate mathematics. It does not permit dramatic paradoxes like killing one's grandfather. But it suggests that time may not be a simple one-way stream, as though the universe weaves reality from both directions at once. The philosopher Henri Bergson wrote in Creative Evolution, "The present contains nothing more than the past, and what is found in the effect was already in the cause." Yet, if quantum mechanics is correct, perhaps something of the reverse is also true. Cause and effect are not entirely separate. Perhaps past and future are two faces of a deeper structure. Do not worry if this feels overwhelming. Breathe more slowly. At the level of everyday life, causality still functions as you expect. A glass falls and shatters. A seed sprouts before it becomes a tree. But at the deepest level, where electrons leap between energy levels, the universe may not obey our linear intuition. And that is not frightening. It simply reminds us that reality is larger than our descriptions. Niels Bohr once said, "Anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it." Perhaps the initial shock is only a sign that we are standing before something that exceeds familiar patterns. And if we remain with it long enough, the shock softens into wonder. If the future can whisper to the past at the microscopic level, it does not mean you lose your freedom. It only means that time may be a more intricate network than a simple river. A network in which connections run deeper than you imagine. And if the universe truly is a structure in which events are linked beyond both space and time, perhaps you are not as separate from your past and future as you believe. Memory is not merely a trace of what has been. Hope is not merely imagination of what is to come. They may be two dimensions of a single conscious structure. As you lie still in the night, thoughts drifting like small particles, perhaps you are touching that structure, a space where time is not entirely linear, a space where dreams blend past and future. In dreams, you do not ask how such blending is possible. You simply experience it. Perhaps quantum mechanics offers us only a gentle hint that reality is not locked into a single direction, that somewhere in the foundation of every particle and wave there is a silent dialogue across time, not loud, not dramatic, only subtle, like a whisper. And as you close your eyes, letting consciousness soften into sleep, perhaps the most comforting thought is not that we can reverse time, but that at the deepest level, the universe is not a simple arrow. It is a tapestry woven from correlations, and you are part of that pattern. Let that strangeness not frighten you. Let it soothe you. For if reality is that deep and gentle, perhaps you too are held within its structures softly, even when you do not fully understand it. And so, in the quiet of night, science and meditation are no longer opposed. They both point toward one truth. Reality is vaster than any timeline you have ever imagined, and that is enough for you to rest. Begin with something very small, a clock. If you place one clock on the ground and another on an airplane flying around the earth, when they return and you compare them, you will find a tiny difference. Not because they are broken, not because of error, but because time itself has passed differently. In 1971, the physicists Joseph Haffel and Richard Keating performed precisely this experiment. They carried extraordinarily precise atomic clocks aboard commercial flights, circling the planet in opposite directions. When the clocks were brought back and compared, they found the clock flown eastward had lost a few nanoseconds. The clock flown westward had gained a few. The difference was so small that without delicate instruments, you would never notice. But it was enough to confirm what Albert Einstein had predicted in 1905 and 1915. Time is not absolute. It depends on velocity and on gravity, in relativity, the special and the general theory Einstein wrote. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Here, illusion does not mean false. It means not absolute. When you move faster, your time slows relative to someone at rest. When you are closer to a massive body like Earth, your time passes more slowly than for someone farther away. This is not confined to laboratories. Each time you open a map on your phone and use GPS, you rely on relativistic corrections. GPS satellites orbit Earth at high speeds and at altitudes where gravity is weaker. If engineers did not account for time dilation from both special and general relativity, errors would accumulate into kilometers each day. You do not think about this while searching for a cafe, but at a deeper level, you are using time travel as a tool. Then there are tiny particles called muons. Muons are created when cosmic rays strike the upper atmosphere. They live for only about 2 microseconds. At ordinary speeds, they would decay long before reaching the ground, but they travel near the speed of light, and so their time dilates. From their perspective, the distance contracts. From ours, their internal clocks run slower. The result, far more muons reach Earth's surface than would be possible if time were absolute. This is not theory alone. It has been verified again and again in particle accelerators across the world. So when we ask, is it possible to travel into the future? The answer is yes, just not in the cinematic way. If you boarded a ship traveling at 99% of the speed of light, you could return to Earth and find that hundreds of years had passed while you had aged only a few. You would not return to the past, but you would leap into the future. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. For him, time was finite, something that passes and does not return. Yet modern physics reminds us that time does not pass identically for everyone. There is no single cosmic clock. We are each moving through space-time along our own trajectory. There is something gentle in that thought. Time is not a river forcing everyone along at the same pace. It is a flexible dimension shaped by how you move and where you stand. You have traveled into the future every time you boarded an airplane, just by a nanosecond. But in principle, it is the same mechanism. No strange machine required, no exotic matter, only velocity and gravity. The philosopher Henry Bergson distinguished between physical time and lived time. In Time and Free Will, he wrote, "Duration is the continuous progress of the past which gnaws into the future and which swells as it advances." Perhaps the most fascinating difference lies here. Physically, you can slow a clock. Experientially, each moment still feels like a moment. An astronaut in orbit does not feel their time dilating. They do not sense that they are drifting into the future faster than someone on Earth. Subjectively, they still live second by second just as you do. So, what truly changes, perhaps traveling into the future, is not a dramatic leap. It is a small divergence, accumulated quietly, a silent difference between trajectories, and that mirrors life itself. We do not realize we are traveling through time. We simply live. Yet every choice, every step, every change in the velocity of your life places you on a different trajectory through space-time. We drift forward 1 second per second. And the strangest thing is not that we can reach the future. It is that we are always already on that path. We cannot stop. We cannot go back. But we can understand more deeply. we can see that time is not an absolute chain. It is the elastic structure of the universe. We can recognize that each moment you live, whether brief or prolonged, is a unique slice of space-time. And when you close your eyes tonight, you too are traveling. Sleep is a gentle time skip. You leave consciousness, and when you awaken, the future has arrived. No machine required, no equations needed, only trust in the deep structure of reality. Time travel is not a distant dream. It is already happening, quietly, precisely, peacefully, and you right now are on that journey. Imagine you are standing on a hill, looking down at a long road winding through a valley. From above, you can see the entire road at once, its curves, its slopes, the small bridges crossing the stream. But the person walking that road sees only a few meters ahead. From their perspective, the future is open. From your vantage point on the hill, the entire route is already present. The block universe suggests that reality is like that hill. The whole timeline from your birth to your final moment already exists as a complete structure within space-time. Albert Einstein once wrote, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. If that distinction is an illusion, then the future is not something being created. It is simply something you have not yet experienced." And so the question arises, if every event already exists as a fixed point in the structure of the universe, are your choices truly choices, or are you merely passing through predetermined coordinates? This is where determinism enters. Determinism holds that every event is determined by prior conditions, together with the laws of nature. If one knew the exact state of the universe at a given moment, one could in principle calculate the entire future. Pierre-Simon Laplace imagined a superintelligence, later called Laplace's demon, capable of predicting all past and future from present data alone. A fully determined universe. Within such a vision, freedom seems fragile. Yet philosophy does not end there. Compatibilism emerges as a gentle bridge between freedom and necessity. According to this view, you remain free, not free from causation, but free to act according to your own desires, beliefs, and reasoning. David Hume wrote in An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, by liberty, then we can only mean a power of acting or not acting according to the determinations of the will. If your action arises from your will and not from external coercion, then you are free even if that will itself has deeper causes within the structure of the universe. This does not erase the feeling of choice. It places choice within a larger context. Now imagine a gentler scenario. Suppose you could meet your future self, not as a science fiction paradox, but as a quiet, imagined conversation. Your future self sits before you. They are calm. They have passed through what now troubles you. If the future already exists within the block universe, that version of you is already there. And yet, in this moment, you still feel that you are choosing. Soren Kierkegaard wrote in his journal's life, can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Perhaps this is the key. Whether the universe's structure is fixed or not, your experience unfolds forward. From within time, you do not see the entire road. You see only the next step. And that very sense of uncertainty, of not knowing, is the ground of freedom. The block universe does not necessarily remove freedom. It reframes it. Perhaps freedom is not the power to alter the structure of the cosmos. Perhaps it is the power to be fully present within the slice you inhabit. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, confine yourself to the present. Whether the future already exists or not, the only thing you can touch is this present moment. If you could meet your future self and know everything in advance, would you still feel as though you were choosing? Or would each decision become mechanical? Perhaps what gives freedom meaning is uncertainty, not because the future does not exist, but because you have not yet experienced it. Like a novel, all read printed and resting on a shelf, the story exists from first page to last, yet the reader still trembles, still hopes, still fears, not because the story is unwritten, but because they have not yet read that far. Perhaps life is similar. From the outside of time, every chapter is there, but from within each turning page is discovery. And that experience is what gives meaning. As you lie quietly in the dark, the question of freedom becomes less a logical puzzle and more a feeling. You feel that you can choose how to respond, choose how to love, choose how to forgive. Even if the structure of the universe already includes that choice, the experience of choosing is yours. Perhaps freedom is not about breaking the laws of nature. Perhaps it is about inhabiting your role within them fully. And perhaps, instead of asking, am I truly free? You might ask more gently, am I living this moment fully? The block universe may be an unchanging structure, but your consciousness, the awareness listening to these words, is where meaning arises. You may not alter the entire timeline, but you can alter how you are present within it. And in the stillness of night, the question of freedom does not demand a final answer. It only asks that you breathe, slow down, and recognize that whether the universe is a fixed block or an open flow, you are living this moment truly. And perhaps that is enough. Imagine standing before a mirror, but in the mirror, it is not your present reflection. It is you from 10 years ago. Those eyes, those thoughts, those very different worries and hopes. Would you recognize yourself? Philosophy has long wrestled with this paradox, the paradox of personal identity. What makes a person remain the same across time? Is it the body, yet your cells are constantly replaced? Is it memory, yet memory fades, distorts, rewrites itself? The philosopher John Locke proposed that personal identity lies in the continuity of consciousness, especially memory. In an essay concerning human understanding, he wrote, "For since consciousness always accompanies thinking, and 'tis that makes everyone to be what he calls self. If you remember performing an action, then you are the one who performed it. But what if memory changes? Or what if you were to meet another version of yourself, identical in memory up to a certain point, and then diverging? Imagine a gentle scenario of time travel. You return to the past. You meet your younger self, biologically identical, sharing the same memories up to the moment of separation. But from that encounter onward, two lives branch apart. Who is the real you? The philosopher Derek Parfit, in Reasons and Persons, posed similar questions. He suggested that personal identity may not matter as much as we think. What matters, he argued, is psychological continuity, the causal connections between mental states. Parfit wrote, "Identity is not what matters." It sounds startling, but he was not denying your experience. He was suggesting that instead of searching for an immutable self, we might accept that a person is a chain of connected states, like a flame. The flame burning tonight is not the same flame as an hour ago. The molecules have changed. Yet we still call it one flame. Perhaps personal identity is like that. A continuity of process, not a fixed object. The philosopher David Hume wrote in a treatise of human nature, "I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception." When he searched for the self, he found only experiences, never a stable entity behind them. If that is so, then yesterday's you and today's you are not one enduring substance. They are streams of experience flowing into one another, and this need not unsettle you. It may carry a quiet healing. If identity is not a rigid block, you are allowed it to change, allowed to grow, allowed to release older versions of yourself. You do not need to defend an unchanging self. You need only maintain a gentle continuity of awareness. And if you could live alongside your past self, perhaps the first emotion would not be rivalry, but compassion. You would look at that younger version and understand what they did not yet understand. Forgive what they handled awkwardly. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Perhaps identity is not perfect sameness. It is the capacity to look back across time with understanding. If the block universe is true, then every version of you, younger, older, exists at its own coordinate. No one disappears. You simply no longer stand at that point. This can soften regret. The mistakes of the past are not eternal sentences. They are slices within a larger structure. You are no longer that person, but that person is part of the path that led you here. As you lie quietly tonight, imagine yourself as a river. No single drop remains, yet the river still has a name. Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." Perhaps you are the same. You are never exactly the same person twice, yet you remain yourself in a softer, more fluid sense. And if one night in a dream you meet your past self, remember, these are not competing identities. They are 2 points within a continuous flow. Identity is not a stone fixed in the current of time. It is a harmony of memory, experience, and meaning. Yesterday's you is not entirely today's you, but neither is it entirely different, like this breath following the previous one. When you inhale, you are not precisely the being you were a second ago, yet you are not severed from that being either. Perhaps personal identity is not a problem to solve with precision. It is a gentle invitation. Can you look at your past and future selves with kindness? If you can, then however complex time may be, you preserve what matters most. Not an unchanging self, but a continuity of awareness capable of loving itself through each moment. And in the stillness of night, the question, who am I across time, is no longer frightening. It is only a small ripple within the current, and you are still flowing gently whole within the change. Perhaps the strangest thing does not lie in wormholes or spinning black holes, not in whether we might leap centuries into the future, but in something far simpler. We are already drifting through time second by second, and we rarely notice it. Time is not merely the fourth dimension in the equations of Albert Einstein. It is what makes a moment impossible to repeat. If causality is the structure that links all events, then time is the space between them, the interval that allows one thing to lead to another. Without time, there would be no because, no seed becoming a tree, no apology leading to forgiveness. Causality is not only a physical law, it is the foundation of responsibility. And responsibility only has meaning if time flows. The philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote in Critique of Pure Reason that time is an a priori form of intuition, a condition that makes experience possible. Perhaps time is not an object out there, but it is a condition for consciousness, and consciousness is where all value is born. If you could return to the past and correct every mistake, would your choices today still carry weight? If you were immortal, would an hour still feel precious? Martin Heidegger wrote, "In being and time, being toward death is essentially being ahead of itself." We live in the awareness of our finitude, It is this finitude that gives each moment its particular tone. Time is not the thief of youth. It is what gives youth its meaning. If everything stood still forever, there would be no just in time, no too late, no right now. Finitude is not a flaw of existence. It is the condition that gives existence depth. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, not to sow fear, but to remind us that every second carries the weight of irreversibility." When we ask whether a time machine can be built, we are asking about the limits of physics. But when we ask what time means, we are asking about our own limits. Perhaps we will never return to the past. Perhaps we will never leap thousands of years ahead. Yet, we are always standing within a quiet miracle. This moment has never existed before, and it will never exist again in precisely the same way. Augustine of Hippo once wrote in Confessions, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know." We feel time more clearly than any concept. But when we try to define it, it dissolves. Perhaps the meaning of time does not lie in fully understanding it, but in living it fully. Think of a conversation you once had, an embrace, a quiet afternoon. What moved you was not the structure of space-time, but the fact that it passed and cannot be repeated. If you could return infinitely, would that embrace still move you? Perhaps the strangest thing is not that we might return to the past, but that we are constantly passing through it, second by second, without ever realizing it. We say time passes, but in truth it is we who pass through the coordinates of space-time. Each step is a displacement, each breath a quiet crossing. You do not need a machine to travel through time. You are already on that journey right now, gently, silently. And within that passing, there is a very discreet beauty. You cannot hold this moment, but you can feel it, not to cling, only to recognize its presence. When you close your eyes, nighttime will continue, but you do not need to chase it. You only need to rest within its current. You do not need to understand the entire structure of the universe. You do not need to solve every paradox. It is enough to know that this finitude, this heartbeat, this awareness is what makes each second precious. And perhaps when we stop trying to bend time, we begin to understand it in a quieter way, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a gift unfolding moment by moment. Breathe in, breathe out. Time is not something we must conquer. It is the space in which we are allowed to live, and in the stillness of night, the true miracle is not returning to the past. It is that we are here passing through it second by second, rarely aware. And now you may let this moment continue on, gently, peacefully,